Hello and welcome to the day ahead. It is Monday, January the 19th. I'm Andrew Gagan. Well, the local market is set to open flat with ASX futures down just 1 point. Global equity markets fell on Friday, Wall Street ending with modest weekly losses despite strong earnings in tech and banking ahead of the 3-day Martin Luther King holiday weekend in the US. For the week, the S&P lost 0.4%, the Nasdaq declined 0.2%, and the Dow lost 0.33%. Big US banks posted mostly solid results as the S&P 500 reporting period got underway. Shares of lender M&T Bank rose after solid fourth quarter results and then fell marginally at the close. Hotel operators Hilton and Marriott, they were mixed after Barclays lifted price targets on their stock but downgraded Hyatt Hotels, with the broker expecting growth in the lodging industry to pick up this year. Earnings season ramps up this week in the US with Johnson & Johnson and Intel among those companies reporting, as well as Netflix amid its plans to accelerate revenue growth by buying Warner Brothers. The streaming giant is battling Paramount for one of the most prized studios in Hollywood. Year over year, US estimated earnings growth for the fourth quarter is up just slightly from last week after a mixed bag of results from major banks and some other companies that kicked off reporting season, with results in from 33 of the S&P companies. Earnings growth is now seen at 9% for the quarter, according to LSEG. Well, President Trump has threatened fresh tariffs on goods from European nations that oppose his push to take control of Greenland. He's vowed to implement a wave of increasing tariffs on Denmark, Sweden, France, Germany, and the Netherlands, and Finland, along with Britain and Norway, until the US is allowed to buy Greenland. All 8 countries already subject to US tariffs of between 10 and 15%. Tensions between the US and Europe will be in full focus when President Trump appears at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Meanwhile, investors are watching for an expected housing stimulus package from President Trump, having promised that he referred to as some of the most aggressive housing reform plans in American history, which could have implications for Australian companies with US exposure such as James Hardie and Reliance Worldwide. US bond yields and the US dollar rose in response to President Trump's implication that his economic advisor Kevin Hassett may not be a leading candidate to head the Federal Reserve. President Trump saying, "I actually want to keep you where you are. If you want to know the truth, I would lose you. It's a serious concern to me. We'll see how it all works out." Well, the US two-year Treasury yield rose to 3.61%, the 10-year at 4.23%. Markets pricing in no chance the Fed funds rate will be cut by 25 basis points at the next meeting at the end of this month, with a total of around 2 more cuts this easing cycle. The US dollar index closed up slightly on Friday, supported by renewed tariff threats on European countries. The Aussie is trading at 66.8 US cents. Oil prices rose on Friday as investors covered short positions ahead of the long weekend and amid concerns about a possible US military strike against Iran. Brent crude settling at $64 a barrel. Gold fell more than 1% as investors took profits after recent record highs. Spot gold down 0.5% at around $4,595 an ounce. Copper fell more than 2.5%. Iron ore little changed at around 107 US a tonne. And Bitcoin is trading at around 95,000 US dollars. Ahead locally this week, the focus will be on jobs data this Thursday, while NAB's fourth quarter business survey is released at the end of the week. And overseas, US markets will be closed for Martin Luther King Day on Monday. Today, China releases GDP figures and retail sales. Tomorrow, UK jobs numbers and China's 5-year prime loan rate. Wednesday, UK inflation data. And Friday, inflation data is released in New Zealand and Japan, while the Bank of Japan meets also. That's your week ahead. We'll see you again tomorrow.